Hello, my name is Karina Hernandez, and welcome to another episode of What If, a podcast about what would happen if these sci-fi-ish scenarios did happen. For today's episode, I will be talking about or trying to visualize how, as humans, we would adapt to a new habitat of the entire Earth being flooded in water. So, let's get down to business. So, for the first thing I would like to address, that would be quite obvious, is pollution. If the entire world, as it was now, were to flood, all the gasoline and toxic things that we might have inland that aren't affecting us now is going to now be in the water circulating. So I don't know how polluted the water will be, because I'm not sure of that number or ratio, but I do know it will be there, and over time it will probably worsen since there's nowhere for it to go but into the ocean, as the entire world will be covered in agua. Living would probably be a 20-foot in diameter cylinder. It would most likely have a rounded top, which sloped, as that would be the water line. The rest of that would be all cylindrical and a rounded bottom. There would be feet that would go to the ocean floor, and that would be what it would typically look like. There would be details. It would be fairly high, as the ocean depth would have a lot to do with it. We'd only be able to habitat the shallowest parts of the ocean, and there would be multiple levels. The utmost level would be uncovered, and that is where there would be a fan to pump air in as a vent to let out stale air. For electricity and energy, it would probably be solar and wind, as those are good forms depending on where you live. So, that would be what our house looked like. To get in and out of the house would be through the bottom. If I were to just draw the bottom of this real quick, it would be... That was horrible. Hold on. It would be a circular bottom with a hole in the middle of it. This would be where entrance and exit was. There would be the ocean floor, and the people with scuba suits would come in through here. There'd be a floor close above it. It would be low ceiling, maybe 7 feet high. And when they entered the room, air would be pushed in with a high pressurized fan, and it would push the water out through the hole. Then you would get out through a door. Once you were out, it would release and seal, and it would keep the water level there until you were ready to leave again. At this depth, though, there wouldn't be much swimming, as the pressure could easily hurt somebody. So the thought of swimming, they'd have to be in special suits for deep sea diving. And most likely the people who would be swimming would be the people who caught fish for food or any of those kinds of things. Pets, probably, we wouldn't have those anymore. Like, most animals that weren't water dwelling would go kind of extinct. I'm not sure how trees would go. I'm very sure that if we map this out another way, we could end up living in trees, but only for a short time, as the salt water would kill the trees that weren't adapted to use it. The most frequent way to travel would be boat. As boat, you could go longer distances. For short distances, possibly from cylinder to cylinder, we would use small submarines. They would look typically like a teardrop shape, perhaps. Why won't this work? A teardrop shape with some kind of window to see through, a sealed door. There would need to be oxygen tanks, as you would need to make sure there was oxygen in there. That's why these would not be used for long distance travel, as we would need more oxygen. There would be a propeller on the back and stabilizing fins on the underneath and top. It looks kind of like a mechanical shark, but I assure you, not my intention. This could be a good form of transportation if you aren't going far, kind of like how the common car is used now, except you would need to go and get oxygen from somewhere before you left on your trip, or for a pit stop elsewhere. That would probably be the most frequent way to travel. This would make distance almost more stretched out, as unless you had sea landing planes, which we would probably have planes still, they would be more difficult because we would need to have the floating a floating takeoff place. Most likely helicopters would be better, as they didn't need such a long runway. That would probably be the fastest way of travel, but boats at that age would be less expensive because they took much longer to get from one place to the other. The layout of how everything would look would most likely be in like rows of 3. Because they're only like 20 feet across, it would be like a normal city block, how our blocks are now. Of course, we wouldn't need roads, but we still need space in between. So it would be like a 20 feet, which means that each block would be approximately 40 feet wide. And each of those would be who knows how many long. So something times 20, right? However many times 20 would be how long they were. City blocks probably wouldn't get more than 10 wide. So let's just do that. Approximately 40 feet by 100 feet would be how big each city block was. And the space here, in between here, would be nearly non-existent. So there would be little kind of ways, like in between. They would be much similar to roads, because even though they're not roads, it would still just be the open space in between all the vessels. The food we would eat would most likely be fish or other seafood, like shellfish or octopus or any other sea-dwelling creatures that we could find. Those would probably be caught via spearfishing or deep-sea diving. Another great food would be like kelp or sea moss, any sea vegetables that we could acquire. One thing that would be most important is having access to vitamins, as the diet without the food that we have now, that we've adapted to, many people could become malnourished only eating fish and sea vegetables. and the water we drank would have to be distilled because of the salt. In fact, there would probably be on each faucet a small distillery on the side. So if I were to do a side view of the house that you lived in, let's zoom way in, and you have a floor, a sink, and a faucet. On the outside of your house, most likely, you would have purely pressurized water, but because that was salt water, you would have to have some kind of mechanism to either filter or distill the water before it was just simply pushed out the other end. There could be some kind of way that the water comes in here and gets heated up by some kind of element here, steams to the top, and drips down into here. Then it is filtered and comes out your faucet. It would be quite a mechanism, but because it's distilled, we would definitely need vitamins and minerals that we would not be getting on that type of diet. The most worrisome things, apart from the everyday fears of sharks, would be possibly whales, depending on where you lived. Honestly, in the flood, we wouldn't have too much to worry about. The whale migration path would change, though, and we would have to keep an eye on that, as if the migration path changes because there's no longer land in the way, then we would have to be careful not to build any neighborhoods inside of the migration path. Otherwise, it would definitely become harmful to have whales swimming through, which could be destructive, and getting barnacles on the sides of anything that is important or underneath, where, as before, there's a little port underneath the bottom. Getting barnacles down there, anywhere around here, could be harmful if you were to get cut while trying to get to your house. That would be a very worrisome thing that could cause a lot of injuries if barnacles were to come and become part of that area there, which we would not like to have. So I believe I covered everything. If you think I didn't, or if you have any questions or comments, email me at corinanesta@gmail.com. If I can spell it right, that's CORRINANesta@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I really hoped you enjoyed it as much as I did. I will see you next time on the next episode, where I will be exploring the possibility of what would happen if animals had the same brain capacity as humans do. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.